A single glass of wine, a trembling hand, a billionaire's life hanging by a thread. What would you do if you saw someone poison your customer's drink? Would you speak up and risk everything, or stay silent and let fate decide? One waitress made a split-second choice that changed 2 lives forever. Stay with me until the end of this story, hit that like button, and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this journey travels. The rain came down in sheets that Thursday night, turning Seattle's streets into rivers of reflected neon. Inside Etienne, the kind of restaurant where reservations required both money and connections, the atmosphere was all warm amber light and the soft murmur of wealth at ease. Crystal clinked against porcelain. Somewhere, a piano played something French and forgettable. Landon Pierce barely noticed any of it. He sat at his usual corner table, the one with a view of Elliott Bay through floor-to-ceiling windows, watching Graham Voss work his way through an appetizer that cost more than most people's car payments. His business partner, his friend, if that word still meant anything at this level, was talking about the merger again. He'd been talking about it for weeks. "The Taiwanese want an answer by Monday," Graham said, cutting into some kind of shellfish thing that Landon couldn't pronounce. "We stall any longer, they'll think we're not serious." Landon reached for his wine glass, then stopped. Something felt off tonight. He couldn't pin it down. Graham seemed normal enough, same expensive suit, same easy confidence, same way of eating that suggested he'd been doing this his whole life, even though Landon knew for a fact Graham had grown up in a 1-bedroom apartment in Tacoma. "Monday's fine," Landon said. "I'll have Rachel send over the revised terms." Graham smiled. It was his boardroom smile, the one that never quite reached his eyes. "You're overthinking this, you know that? This deal is solid. We bring them in, we triple our Pacific Rim presence inside 18 months. It's exactly what we need." "Maybe." "Maybe." Graham's fork paused halfway to his mouth. "What's that supposed to mean?" Landon shrugged. The truth was, he didn't know what it meant. Just a feeling. The same feeling that had kept him alive in business for a decade. The sense that something wasn't adding up, that there were numbers behind the numbers, conversations behind the conversations. "Just want to make sure we're not moving too fast," he said. Graham set down his fork with a soft clink. "Landon, brother, we've been working towards something like this for 8 years. Since the beginning, you and me. This is what we built the company for." Brother. Graham had started using that word about 3 years ago. Landon had never been sure how he felt about it. He had a brother once, a real one, dead now, 5 years in the ground. Graham knew that. Everyone knew that. The car accident that killed David Pierce had made the papers, the kind of headline that comes with photos of twisted metal and questions about whether alcohol was involved. It had been. David had been driving drunk. The other driver, a teacher heading home from a late shift, had died instantly. David had lingered for 6 hours. Long enough for Landon to get to the hospital, not long enough for any of the things that needed to be said. "I know," Landon said quietly. "I just need the weekend to think." Graham studied him for a long moment, then picked up his wine glass. "Fair enough. But stop torturing yourself, man. This is a good thing. Sometimes you have to trust the people around you." Landon nodded and turned his attention to the view. Outside, the rain kept falling. A ferry was crossing the bay, its lights smeared across the dark water. He thought about his daughter, Sophie. She'd be asleep by now in the bedroom of their house in Madison Park, her nightlight casting stars across the ceiling. Tomorrow was Saturday. Maybe they'd go to the aquarium like she'd been asking. Maybe he'd actually take the whole day off for once. "Sir?" The voice came from his left. Landon turned. The waitress stood beside their table, hands clasped in front of her like she was about to deliver bad news. She was young, early 30s maybe, with dark hair pulled back and the kind of face that you'd forget the moment she walked away. The name tag on her black vest said Elena. "Yes?" Landon said. She didn't look at him. Her eyes were fixed on the wine glass in front of him, the one he'd barely touched. Her hands were shaking. "I'm so sorry," she said. Her voice was quiet, almost lost under the piano music. "There's been a mistake with your wine." Graham frowned. "A mistake?" "The wrong vintage." Elena's words came out too fast, like she'd rehearsed them but couldn't quite get the rhythm right. I need to replace it. Our sommelier noticed when he checked the cellar inventory. Landon glanced at his glass. It looked fine. Smelled fine. He wasn't much of a wine expert. Graham was the one who cared about that stuff. But nothing seemed obviously wrong. It's fine, he said. Really, I haven't even... Please... Elena's voice cracked just barely. She still wasn't looking at him. It'll only take a moment. There was something in her tone, not just nervousness, fear maybe, or urgency dressed up as politeness. Landon had spent enough time reading people across boardroom tables to recognize when someone was performing, and this woman was barely holding her performance together. He pushed the glass toward her. Sure. Thank you. Elena's hand darted out and grabbed the glass with a movement that was almost violent in its speed. Wine sloshed over the rim, dark red against white tablecloth. She pulled back immediately, her face flushing. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I'll bring you another right away. She hurried off toward the kitchen, moving fast enough that the other waiters had to sidestep out of her path. Landon watched her go, that uncomfortable feeling in his gut getting stronger. Well, that was weird, Graham said. Landon didn't answer. He was watching the kitchen door swing shut behind Elena. Through the small window, he could see her silhouette, standing perfectly still, not moving, just standing there, holding his wine glass like it might explode. You okay? Graham asked. Fine, Landon said automatically. Just tired. He wasn't tired. He was wide awake, his instincts screaming at him that something had just happened, something important, but he couldn't see the shape of it yet. It was like trying to read a contract in the dark. You knew the words were there, but you couldn't make them out. Elena returned 5 minutes later with a fresh glass. Her hands were steadier now, but she still wouldn't meet his eyes. She set the wine down carefully, murmured another apology, and disappeared again. Landon watched her retreat to the far corner of the dining room, where she stood with two other servers, whispering. One of them, an older guy with gray hair and the bearing of someone who'd worked fine dining his whole life, glanced at Landon's table, then shook his head and walked away. You gonna drink that or just stare at it? Graham asked. Landon picked up the new glass. Took a sip. It tasted exactly like the first one had, as far as he could tell. He set it down and went back to his meal, some kind of fish thing that probably had a French name he couldn't pronounce, but he couldn't shake the feeling. They finished dinner making small talk, Graham's new boat, Sophie's upcoming birthday party, the Seahawks' chances this season. Normal stuff, easy stuff. The kind of conversation that filled space without meaning anything. At some point, Landon realized he'd been scanning the restaurant, looking for Elena. She'd vanished. Maybe she'd gone home. Maybe she was in the kitchen having a breakdown over whatever had just happened. The check came. Graham made his usual gesture toward his wallet, and Landon made his usual gesture back. This one's on me. They'd been doing this dance for years. Graham always offered. Landon always paid. It was part of the unspoken contract between them, the way their friendship worked. Graham brought the ideas and the energy. Landon brought the money and the last name that opened doors. Fair trade, right? They walked out into the rain together. The valet brought Graham's Tesla around first, sleek and black and somehow smug-looking, like all Teslas. Graham paused before getting in, one hand on the door. Hey, he said. Seriously, don't overthink the merger. Sleep on it. You'll see it's the right move. I know, Landon said, though he wasn't sure he did. Graham smiled, that boardroom smile again. Tell Sophie her Uncle Graham says hi. Then he was gone, the Tesla gliding away into the rain-slicked night. Landon stood under the restaurant's awning, watching the taillights disappear. Uncle Graham. Sophie had started calling him that about a year ago. Landon had never encouraged it, but he'd never discouraged it either. Graham was good with her, in his way. Always remembered her birthday. Sent expensive gifts that Sophie was too young to appreciate. The valet brought Landon's car, a Range Rover, silver, practical in that way. Rich people's practical cars always cost $100,000. He tipped the kid a 20 and climbed in. The leather seats were cold. Rain hammered on the roof. He sat there for a moment, not starting the engine. Through the restaurant windows, he could see diners still eating, laughing, drinking wine that probably wasn't being poisoned. Normal people having a normal Thursday night. Except it wasn't normal, was it? Something had happened in there. Elena had seen something, done something, saved him from something maybe, though he didn't know what or why. Landon pulled out his phone and called Marcus. It rang 3 times. Yeah? Marcus Chen's voice was rough, like Landon had woken him up, though it was barely 9 o'clock. I need you to pull the security footage from Etienne, Landon said. Tonight, the last 2 hours. A pause. The restaurant? Yes. What am I looking for? Landon watched a couple emerge from the restaurant, huddled under a shared umbrella. They were laughing about something. Young. Happy. The kind of happy that came before you learned how easily things could fall apart. I don't know yet, Landon said. Just get me the footage. Okay. Marcus didn't ask questions. That was why Landon had hired him as head of security 6 years ago. Marcus had spent 15 years with the Secret Service before going private. He understood that sometimes you followed your gut, even when you couldn't explain it. And Marcus? Do it quietly. Always do. Landon ended the call and started the engine. The drive home took 20 minutes through rain and Friday night traffic. His house sat on a quiet street in Madison Park, all dark wood and glass, and the kind of architectural significance that came with historic designation and property taxes that could fund a small school district. The lights were on downstairs. Landon found Sophie's nanny, Teresa, in the living room reading a mystery novel that looked like it had been through a war. She go down okay? Landon asked, shrugging out of his wet coat. Teresa marked her place and closed the book. Like an angel. She made me read Madeline 4 times, though. I think she's memorizing it. Landon smiled despite himself. Sophie was 6 years old and had recently decided she was going to be either an astronaut or a children's book author. The goals changed weekly, but her determination never wavered. She got that from her mother. The stubbornness, the absolute certainty that the world would bend if you pushed hard enough. Anna had been dead for 3 years. Ovarian cancer, stage 4 by the time they caught it. She'd lasted 11 months after diagnosis, most of them spent in hospitals that smelled like disinfectant and defeat. Sophie had been too young to really understand. She still asked about mommy sometimes, in that casual way kids had, like death was just another place people went, like California or Paris. Thanks, Teresa, Landon said. Same time Monday? I'll be here. After she left, Landon climbed the stairs to Sophie's room. He opened the door carefully, letting the hallway light spill across her bed. She was asleep, one arm wrapped around a stuffed elephant that was nearly as big as she was. Her nightlight projected constellations across the ceiling. Orion, Ursa Major, the Big Dipper. Anna had bought that light. One of the last things she'd picked out before the hospital became permanent. Landon stood in the doorway for a long time, just watching his daughter breathe. This was the only part of his life that made sense anymore. Everything else, the company, the money, the deals and dinners and careful political dances, it was all just machinery. But Sophie was real. Sophie mattered. He closed the door and went to his office downstairs, poured himself a scotch he didn't want, and sat behind the desk that had belonged to his father, back when his father still had a pulse and an empire. The desk was mahogany, probably older than Landon. It had survived the 2008 crash, the dot-com bubble, his brother's death, his wife's death. It would probably survive him too. His phone buzzed. Marcus. Got the footage, Marcus said, by sending it to your secure email now. Find anything? Maybe. You'll want to see it yourself. Landon opened his laptop and pulled up the email. 4 video files, each time-stamped. He started with the one from right before Elena had approached their table. The footage was clear. Etienne spared no expense on their security system. Landon could see himself and Graham at the corner table talking. Graham was gesturing with his fork, probably making some point about the merger. Landon was looking out the window. Then, in the background, movement caught his eye. A man in a dark suit was walking past their table. Nothing unusual about that. Etienne was crowded on Thursday nights, but the man's hand moved as he passed. Subtle, quick. Something dropped from his palm into Landon's wine glass. A pill, maybe, or powder. The motion was so smooth it would have been invisible if you weren't looking for it. The man kept walking, disappeared into the hallway that led to the bathrooms. Landon rewound the footage, watched it again. There was no question. Someone had put something in his drink. His hand tightened around the Scotch glass. He switched to the next file. This one showed Elena. She was standing at the server station, organizing menus or napkins or whatever waitresses organized. Then she looked up, turned. Her angle gave her a perfect view of Landon's table. Her face changed. Not dramatically, she was too controlled for that, but something shifted behind her eyes. She'd seen it. The man. The motion. Whatever had gone into the glass. The next footage showed her approaching the table, hands shaking, the whole wrong vintage performance. She took the glass, moved quickly. The video followed her into the kitchen, where she did something Landon didn't expect. She dumped the wine down the sink, then she washed the glass. Not the quick rinse of someone following health codes. She scrubbed it like she was trying to erase evidence. When she was done, she stood there for almost a minute, gripping the edge of the steel counter, her shoulders rising and falling like she'd just run a marathon. Then she poured a fresh glass from a different bottle and went back out to deliver it. Landon sat back in his chair. The scotch was forgotten. Someone had tried to poison him, and a waitress he'd never met had stopped it without saying a word. The question was why? Why would someone try to poison him in a public restaurant? And why would Elena risk her job, maybe her life, to intervene? He pulled up the fourth video file. This one was from the parking lot. Grainy, rain-soaked, harder to make out details. But Landon could see the man in the dark suit leaving through the side exit. He walked to a car, black sedan, no plates visible in the rain, and got in. Just before the car door closed, something caught the light. A watch. The man's watch. Landon paused the video, zoomed in as much as the grainy footage would allow. His blood went cold. He recognized that watch. He should. He'd bought it. A Patek Philippe, custom-made, one of only 3 in the world. He'd given it to Graham 5 years ago as a gift after they'd closed their first major deal. Graham wore it everywhere, called it his lucky charm. Landon stared at the frozen image on his screen, at the watch that couldn't be anyone's but Graham's, at the man who'd poisoned his wine walking away into the rain. The Scotch glass slipped from his hand and shattered on the hardwood floor. Outside, the rain kept falling. Somewhere in the house, a clock was ticking. Sophie was asleep upstairs, safe in her room with her stuffed elephant and her Constellation nightlight, dreaming whatever 6-year-olds dreamed about. And Landon sat in his father's office, staring at a computer screen, watching his best friend try to kill him. He didn't sleep that night. Didn't even try. He sat at the desk until sunrise, watching the footage over and over, looking for something that would make it make sense. Maybe it wasn't Graham's watch. Maybe it was a coincidence. Maybe the angle was wrong. The light was playing tricks. Maybe he was seeing patterns that weren't there because he was tired and paranoid and still not over losing Anna. But he knew the truth. Graham had tried to kill him. The question was what to do about it. At 6 in the morning, Landon's phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer. Then something made him pick up. "Mr. Pierce?" A woman's voice. Quiet. Nervous. "Who is this?" "It's Elena. Elena Hart. From the restaurant. I need to talk to you. Please. It's important." Landon's exhaustion vanished. He sat forward in his chair, ignoring the dried scotch on the floor, the broken glass he hadn't cleaned up. "I'm listening," he said. A long pause. In the background, Landon could hear traffic. She was calling from outside somewhere. A payphone, maybe, though who used those anymore? "Not on the phone," Elena said. "Can we meet? Somewhere public. I saw something last night, something you need to know about." "What did you see?" "Please, I can't talk about it like this. I know how this sounds. I know I'm just some waitress you don't know from anyone, but I swear I'm not crazy. Someone tried to hurt you last night, and I think they're going to try again." Landon looked at the frozen image on his laptop screen, Graham's watch catching the light. "Where?" he asked. "There's a coffee shop on Pike, the old one, with the green awning. Do you know it?" "I'll find it." "1 hour?" "I'll be there." Elena hung up without saying goodbye. Landon sat listening to the dial tone for a moment, then set the phone down. His hands were steady. That surprised him. He'd thought they'd shake, the way Elena's had when she took his wine glass. But they were rock solid. Maybe he was in shock. Or maybe some part of him had been expecting this, waiting for the other shoe to drop. His whole life had been a series of shoes dropping, his brother dying drunk behind the wheel, his wife dying slow in a hospital bed, his father's empire crumbling until Landon had to build a new one from the pieces. Why should his best friend trying to kill him be any different? He went upstairs and checked on Sophie. Still asleep. Still safe. He stood in her doorway for a long time, watching the rise and fall of her breathing, the way her fingers curled around the elephant's trunk. Whatever was coming, whatever Graham had planned, Sophie couldn't be part of it. She'd already lost her mother. She couldn't lose her father, too. Landon pulled out his phone and called Marcus again. Yeah? Marcus sounded more awake this time. I need you to put a security detail on my daughter. Today. Now. The best people you have. A beat of silence. What's going on? Just do it. And don't tell anyone, not Graham, not anyone at the company. No one. Understood. What about you? I can take care of myself. Can you? Marcus's tone suggested he had his doubts. Landon looked at the frozen image on his laptop again. Graham's watch. Graham's man. Graham's poison. I guess we're about to find out, he said. The coffee shop was exactly what Elena had described. Old, local, the kind of place that had survived gentrification through sheer stubbornness. Landon arrived early and took a table in the back corner where he could watch the door. The morning crowd was thin, a few students with laptops, a construction worker getting something to go. Nobody who looked like a threat. Elena arrived exactly on time. She looked different in civilian clothes. Jeans, a worn jacket, hair down around her shoulders. Younger, somehow. More fragile. She spotted Landon and walked over, moving like she was ready to bolt at any second. Thank you for coming, she said, sitting down across from him. You said someone tried to hurt me. No preamble. No small talk. Elena's eyes met his for the first time, and Landon saw real fear there. I saw a man put something in your wine, she said quietly. Last night, while you and your friend were talking, he walked past your table and dropped something in your glass. I don't know what it was, but the way he did it, it was practiced, like he'd done it before. Did you see his face? Not well. He had his back to me mostly, but I saw his watch. She pulled out her phone, swiped through some photos, and held it up. A blurry image, clearly taken in secret. The man's wrist. The watch. Landon's watch. Graham's watch. I know that watch, Elena continued. The man you were having dinner with, he wears the same one. I've served him before. I remember thinking it was unusual. Expensive watches like that, you don't see two of them. There are three, Landon said quietly. In the whole world. I gave him that watch 5 years ago. Elena's face went pale. The man you were with? He's the one who… No. Landon cut her off, though he wasn't sure why he was protecting Graham. Old loyalty, maybe. Or just denial. The man I was with never left the table, but someone wearing his watch did. They sat in silence for a moment. The espresso machine hissed behind the counter. Someone dropped a spoon. Why didn't you go to the police? Landon asked. Elena looked down at her hands. Would you have believed me? Some waitress saying she saw something, with no proof, no evidence? They would have thought I was trying to get attention, or money. People like you don't listen to people like me. People like me? Rich people. Important people. She said it without malice, just stating a fact. I'm 30 years old, and I make $12 an hour plus tips. My car is older than I am, and my apartment has rats. If I went to the police with a crazy story about poisoning, I'd lose my job. And then what? I can't afford to be unemployed. I can barely afford to be employed. Landon studied her. There was something in the way she held herself, something that suggested she'd been knocked down before and learned how to get back up. So why are you telling me? He asked. Because you deserve to know someone's trying to kill you. Elena's voice was steady now. And because maybe you can do something about it. I can't, but you can. What do you want in return? Nothing. She stood up. I just wanted you to know. What you do with the information is up to you, but be careful. Whoever this is, they're not playing around. And they have access to you. They knew where you'd be, when you'd be there. Which glass was yours? That's not random. That's planned. She turned to leave. Wait, Landon said. Elena stopped but didn't turn around. If you're right, Landon said slowly, if someone's really trying to kill me, then you're in danger too. You saw what happened. You intervened. If they figure that out, I know. Elena's shoulders were tense. I haven't slept. Every time I hear footsteps in my building, I think it's them. But what else was I supposed to do? Let you drink it, watch you die? Most people would have. She finally turned to face him. There were dark circles under her eyes. Maybe, but I'm not most people. Landon made a decision. I'm going to find out who did this, and when I do, I'm going to make sure they can't hurt anyone else. But I need your help. My help? Elena laughed, bitter and short. What could I possibly... You remember details. You notice things. The watch. The way he moved. You're observant in a way most people aren't. Landon leaned forward. I have money, resources, security. But I don't have what you have. I don't see what you see. You want me to spy for you? I want you to be safe. And the best way to keep you safe is to keep you close. Landon pulled out his wallet and extracted a business card. Wrote a number on the back. This is my private line. If you see anything, hear anything, feel anything wrong, you call me, immediately. Elena took the card hesitantly. This is insane. Probably, but someone put poison in my wine last night, and a woman I'd never met saved my life. I'm way past sane right now. A smile flickered across Elena's face. Small, tired, but real. Okay, I'll keep my eyes open, but I need to keep working. I can't afford... You'll keep working, Landon interrupted. Normal schedule, normal routine. Don't change anything. Don't let anyone know we talked. As far as the world's concerned, you're just a waitress and I'm just another customer. Got it? Got it. Landon stood up, extended his hand. Elena shook it. Her grip was stronger than he expected. Thank you, he said. For last night, for today, for not minding your own business. Yeah, well... Elena released his hand and stepped back. Check in with me next week. See if you still think that was a good idea. Then she was gone, walking out into the morning rain. Landon watched through the window as she crossed the street and disappeared around a corner. A woman who made $12 an hour and couldn't afford to be unemployed, risking everything to save a stranger. His phone buzzed. Marcus. Security details in place, Marcus said. Sophie won't even know they're there. Good. Landon walked out of the coffee shop and headed toward his car. Now I need you to do something else. Pull everything you can find on Graham Voss. Financial records, phone logs, emails, meetings, everything. I want to know where he's been, who he's talked to, and what he's planning. That's illegal, Marcus said flatly. I know. Could get us both arrested. I know that too. A pause. What exactly are we looking for? Landon climbed into his Range Rover and sat there, keys in hand, watching the rain streak down the windshield. Proof, he said, that my best friend wants me dead. Marcus delivered the first batch of files 3 days later. Landon sat in his office long after everyone else had gone home, the city lights of Seattle spreading out below him like a circuit board, and started reading. What he found made his skin crawl. The Graham Voss he thought he knew, loyal partner, trusted friend, the guy who'd been there through Anna's funeral and David's memorial, didn't exist in these documents. Or maybe he'd never existed at all. Maybe Landon had been too blind to see what was right in front of him. The financial records were the first red flag. Graham had been moving money. A lot of money. Offshore accounts in the Caymans, shell corporations with names that sounded like they'd been generated by a random word generator. Alpine Holdings, Meridian Trust, Pacific Rim Ventures. Each one connected to the merger deal Graham had been pushing so hard, and each one leading back to a network of investors Landon had never heard of. He picked up his phone and called Marcus. It was nearly midnight, but Marcus answered on the second ring. You seen what I'm seeing? Landon asked. If you mean the fact that your partner's been funneling company assets through more shell companies than a money laundering 101 textbook, then yeah, I'm seeing it. Landon rubbed his eyes. How much? Conservatively, $40 million over the last 18 months, maybe more. The trails get murky after the third or fourth layer of companies. $40 million. Landon let that number sink in. It wasn't enough to sink the company. Pierce Industries was worth billions. But it was enough to hurt. Enough to raise serious questions if the board ever found out. Enough to destroy everything Landon had built. What else? Landon asked. Insurance policies, 3 of them actually, all taken out in the last year. If you die or become incapacitated, Graham becomes majority shareholder, gets full control of the company. It's all legal, all above board, buried in amendments to your partnership agreement that you probably signed without reading. Landon tried to remember. Had he signed something like that? Probably. Graham was always bringing him papers to sign, always with some reasonable explanation, just updating the corporate structure, just making sure we're protected if something happens. Just standard business stuff. There's more, Marcus continued. Graham's been in contact with someone named Viktor Petrov, Russian national, currently residing in Vancouver, ex-military, suspected ties to organized crime, and get this, 3 people who've crossed paths with Petrov in the last 5 years are dead. 1 car accident, 1 suicide, 1 heart attack. All ruled accidental or natural causes. You think Petrov was the one at the restaurant? Can't confirm. The footage isn't clear enough for facial recognition. But the timeline fits. Petrov flew into SeaTac 2 days before your dinner, left the next morning, and Graham had a phone call with him the day before that, lasted 40 minutes. Landon stood up and walked to the window. Below, cars moved through the streets like blood cells through veins. Normal people going about their normal lives, unaware that just above them, someone was discovering his best friend had hired a professional killer. What about the watch? Landon asked. Graham's watch, can we confirm it was the same one? Working on it, but unless Graham's been careless enough to loan it out, yeah, I'd say we're looking at the same piece. Question is, why would he let the guy wear it? That's sloppy. Graham doesn't strike me as sloppy. He wasn't. Graham was meticulous, calculated, always 3 moves ahead, which meant either he'd made a mistake or… Unless he wanted me to see it, Landon said slowly. Why would he want that? I don't know. Power play, maybe? Or insurance. If I figured out someone tried to poison me but couldn't prove it was him, what am I going to do? Accuse my business partner of attempted murder based on a watch? No DA would touch that case? Marcus was quiet for a moment. So what's your play? Landon didn't have an answer. He stared out at the city, thinking about Sophie asleep at home with armed guards outside her room that she didn't know about. Thinking about Elena working her shifts at Etienne, nervously watching every customer, every shadow. Thinking about Graham, probably in his penthouse right now, drinking expensive scotch and planning his next move. I need to know why, Landon said finally. Why now? Why like this? Graham and I built this company together. If he wanted control, why not just ask? I would have made him a fair offer. Maybe fair wasn't what he wanted, or maybe there's something else going on, something we haven't found yet. Keep digging. I want to know everything. Where he goes, who he talks to, what he eats for breakfast, everything. You got it. And Landon? Watch your back. If he's already tried once, I know. Landon ended the call and stood there in the darkness of his office for a long time. His father had built this company from nothing, turned it into an empire. David was supposed to inherit it, but David had killed himself and someone else behind the wheel of a car. So it had fallen to Landon instead. The responsible son. The boring one. The one who did everything right and never complained about it. And now Graham wanted to take it all away. His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Are you okay? Elena. Landon had given her his number but hadn't expected her to use it. He typed back. Fine. You? 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Scared. Keep thinking I see people following me. Landon's jaw tightened. He typed quickly. Where are you? Home. Capitol Hill. Why? Stay there. Lock your doors. I'm sending someone to watch your building. That's not necessary. Yes, it is. If they know you helped me, you're a liability. Please, let me do this. A long pause. Then, okay. Landon called Marcus back. I need another security detail. Elena Hart, Capitol Hill. She needs protection. The waitress? You think they're going after her? I think she's a witness to attempted murder, so yeah, I think she's in danger. On it. Landon sat back down at his desk and pulled up the corporate calendar. Graham had a meeting scheduled with the Taiwanese investors in 2 days. A lunch meeting at some high-end place downtown. The final push to get Landon to sign the merger papers. An idea started forming. Dangerous. Stupid, probably. But it might work. He pulled out his phone and texted Graham. Still on for the meeting Thursday? Graham's response came immediately. Wouldn't miss it. You ready to pull the trigger on this thing? Almost. Still have some questions about the offshore structure. Happy to walk you through it. Trust me, brother. This is going to change everything. Landon stared at that word again. Brother. It made his stomach turn. See you Thursday, he typed back. The next morning, Landon called Elena. She answered on the fourth ring, sounding tired. Did your security guy find me? She asked. Yeah, he's good. You won't even notice him. I noticed. He's parked across the street in a gray sedan, doesn't exactly blend in. Landon almost smiled. I need to ask you something. It's going to sound crazy. Crazier than everything else that's happened this week? Maybe. I'm having a meeting with Graham in 2 days. I want you there. Silence. Elena? Why would you want me there? Her voice was careful. Because I need someone watching who knows what to look for. Someone who notices details. Someone Graham doesn't know is working with me. I'm a waitress, not a spy. You're someone who saw a man poison a drink and had the guts to stop it. That makes you better than most of the people I pay 6 figures. Elena laughed, but it was bitter. You want me to what exactly? Serve you lunch and eavesdrop? The restaurant where we're meeting, Altura downtown, I already called. They're short-staffed this week. I told them I knew an excellent server looking for extra shifts. They said yes. You got me a job? A one-time gig, Thursday lunch. I'll make sure you're assigned to our table. You watch Graham. See if anyone approaches him. See if he makes any calls, anything unusual. This is insane. I know. If he figures out who I am, he won't. You're just another server. He's never paid attention to service staff in his life. Trust me. Another pause. Landon could hear traffic in the background. She was probably walking to work, getting ready for another shift at Etienne where she'd serve people who didn't see her and tip 20% because that's what you did. What's in it for me? Elena asked finally. The truth, I hope. And safety. Once this is over, once I know what Graham's planning, I can protect you properly. Right now, you're just dangling out there, a loose end he might decide to tie up. Jesus. Elena's breath came out shaky. You really think he'd kill me? I think someone already tried to kill me, and you're the only witness. So yeah, I think you're in danger, which is why I need you close, where I can keep an eye on you. You don't even know me. I know you saved my life. That's enough. Elena was quiet for so long Landon thought she'd hung up. Then, okay, Thursday. But if this goes sideways, I'm out. I'm not dying for some billionaire's corporate drama. Fair enough? She hung up without saying goodbye. Landon sat in his car. He'd driven to the office early before Sophie woke up and watched the sun come up over Lake Washington. The water was steel gray, reflecting clouds that looked like smoke. His phone rang. It was his assistant, Rachel. Morning, she said, too cheerful for 7 a.m. Graham called. Wants to move Thursday's meeting up an hour. Something about the investor's schedule. I told him I'd check with you. Landon's instincts prickled. Did he say why? Just that it would work better for everyone. Should I confirm? Yeah, confirm it. But Rachel, I want you to sit in on this meeting. Me? Why? Just do it. Take notes. Observe. I need another set of eyes. Rachel was quiet for a beat. She'd been with Landon for 6 years, long enough to know when something was wrong. Is everything okay? Fine, just being careful. Okay, I'll be there. After he hung up, Landon sat thinking. Graham changing the time wasn't necessarily suspicious, but it felt wrong. Like he was trying to control the variables, adjust the circumstances, maybe bring in some element Landon wouldn't expect. He texted Marcus. Thursday's meeting got moved up an hour. Sweep the restaurant before we arrive. Check for bugs, cameras, anything unusual. Marcus responded immediately. You think he's going to try something in public? I think he already did once. Why not twice? The next 2 days crawled by. Landon went through the motions at work, meetings, calls, emails, while his mind churned through scenarios. He had dinner with Sophie both nights, reading her stories about brave girls and wild adventures, tucking her in under her constellation ceiling. She asked him why the serious-looking man was always sitting in the car outside. "He's a friend of Daddy's," Landon said. "Just making sure we're safe." "Safe from what?" "From your Uncle Graham who wants me dead," Landon thought. But he said, "Nothing, sweetheart, just being careful." Sophie accepted this with the easy logic of 6-year-olds. Adults did weird things for weird reasons. That was just how the world worked. Wednesday night, Elena called. "I'm working the lunch shift tomorrow," she said. "The manager at Altura seemed surprised I was available on such short notice. I told him my other job gave me the day off." "Good. Remember, you're just serving lunch." "I know." "But Landon?" "I looked Graham up. Read some articles about him. He's smart. Really smart. What if he recognizes me from Etienne?" "Did he ever look at you? Really look at you?" Elena thought about it. "No, I don't think so." "Then you're fine." Rich guys like Graham, they don't see service people. We're invisible to them, just part of the background. "We," Elena repeated. "You're one of them." "I try not to be." "Yeah, well, try harder." She hung up. Landon almost called her back to apologize, but he didn't know what he'd be apologizing for. For being born into money? For building a company? For having the kind of life that made people like Elena invisible? Thursday morning came too fast. Landon dressed carefully, a suit that said successful but not trying too hard. He had breakfast with Sophie, let her chatter about her upcoming field trip to the zoo, promised he'd be there. He meant it. If he survived whatever Graham had planned, he was going to be at that field trip. He was going to be there for all of it. Teresa arrived to take Sophie to school. Landon kissed his daughter goodbye and watched her run to Teresa's car, backpack bouncing, completely unaware that her father was about to walk into what might be a trap. Marcus called as Landon was getting into his car. "Restaurant's clean," Marcus said. "No bugs, no cameras, nothing that shouldn't be there. But I'm posting 2 guys inside anyway. They'll be at separate tables dressed like business lunch crowd. Anything goes wrong, they'll move." "I don't want a scene." "You don't want to die either. Trust me, they know how to be discreet." Landon drove downtown through traffic that moved like cold honey. His hands were steady on the wheel. His heart rate was normal. He felt strangely calm, like the moment before jumping into cold water when you're already committed and all you can do is fall. Altura was the kind of restaurant that took itself very seriously. All white tablecloths and modern art that probably meant something. Landon arrived 10 minutes early. Rachel was already there, sitting at their reserved table with her laptop open and her game face on. "Graham's running late," she said. "Texted 5 minutes ago, said he's caught in traffic." Of course he was. Control the timing, control the situation. Landon ordered water and sat facing the door, watching people come and go. He spotted Marcus's guys immediately, one at the bar, one at a corner table with a newspaper. They didn't look at him. And then he saw Elena. She was wearing the restaurant's standard server uniform, black pants, white shirt, professional smile that didn't reach her eyes. She was taking an order at a nearby table, nodding at whatever some businessman was saying, writing it down. To anyone else, she was just another waitress. But Landon saw the tension in her shoulders, the way her eyes kept flicking to the entrance. She was terrified. Graham arrived 15 minutes late, breezing in with the confidence of someone who knew people would wait. He looked good. Expensive suit, perfect haircut, that smile that had charmed investors and board members for years. Sorry, he said, sliding into the seat across from Landon. "Accident on I-5, total nightmare." He nodded at Rachel. "Hey, Rachel, didn't know you were joining us." "Landon wanted me to take notes," Rachel said neutrally. "Of course, the more the merrier." Graham's smile didn't waver, but something flickered behind his eyes. Annoyance, maybe, or calculation. They ordered drinks. Graham got scotch, even though it was barely noon. Landon stuck with water. Elena appeared at their table with menus, and Landon watched Graham's face carefully. Nothing. No recognition. Graham glanced at her the way he'd glance at a piece of furniture, briefly, without interest, and went back to talking about the merger. "The Taiwanese are ready to sign," Graham said, pulling out his tablet. "I've got the final paperwork here. All we need is your signature and we're golden. This time next year, we'll have tripled our market share in Asia." Landon took the tablet, scanned the documents. They looked legitimate. Pages of dense legal language about equity positions and board seats and profit-sharing arrangements. But buried in there, he knew, were the poison pills. The clauses that would give Graham control if anything happened to Landon. "It's a lot of money," Landon said slowly. "It's a smart investment. Come on, we've been over this 100 times. I know, Landon set down the tablet. "I need to understand the offshore structure better. These shell companies, Alpine Holdings, Meridian Trust. Who are these people?" Graham's smile tightened slightly. "They're investment vehicles. Standard stuff. Helps with tax efficiency, liability protection. Your lawyers already looked at it. My lawyers work for the company, which means they work for both of us." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I want independent counsel to review this before I sign." The temperature at the table dropped about 10 degrees. Graham sat back, swirling his scotch, studying Landon with eyes that had gone cold. "You don't trust me," Graham said quietly. "I didn't say that." "You didn't have to." Graham set down his glass. 8 years, Landon. 8 years we've been doing this together. I've been with you through everything. Your brother's death, Anna's cancer, building this company from nothing. And now you're telling me you need independent lawyers? Rachel shifted uncomfortably. Elena had retreated to a nearby service station, pretending to organize silverware, but Landon could see her watching. "It's not about trust," Landon said. "It's about being smart. This is a $1 billion deal. I'd be an idiot not to have it reviewed." "Fine." Graham's voice was sharp. "Get your review. Take your time. But the Taiwanese aren't going to wait forever. They have other options, other partners. You stall too long, this deal disappears." "Then it disappears." Graham stared at him, really stared, like he was seeing Landon for the first time. "You've changed," he said finally. "Have I?" "Yeah, you're paranoid, suspicious. This isn't like you." "Maybe I'm just being careful." "Careful," Graham laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Right. Well, let me know when your careful lawyers finish their careful review. I'll be waiting." He stood up, threw $200 bills on the table, way too much for drinks they hadn't even finished, and walked out. The whole restaurant seemed to exhale. Rachel closed her laptop. "What the hell was that?" "That," Landon said, "was a man who just realized his plan isn't working." "What plan?" Landon looked at Elena. She was still at the service station, gripping a handful of forks like they might save her. Their eyes met across the restaurant. She gave a small nod. She'd seen something. Landon stood up. "Rachel, go back to the office. Tell no one about this meeting. Not the board, not the other partners. No one." "Landon, what's going on?" "I'll explain later. Just trust me. Please." Rachel gathered her things, shooting him a worried look, but she left. Landon walked over to where Elena was standing. Up close, he could see she was shaking. "What did you see?" he asked quietly. "He made a call," Elena whispered. "After he left the table, I followed him to the hallway. He was on his phone. I couldn't hear much, but I heard him say, 'Plan B.' And then he said a name. Victor. Victor Petrov, the Russian, the professional. Anything else?" He sounded angry, really angry, like things weren't going the way he wanted. Elena finally looked at him. "You're in trouble, aren't you? Real trouble." "Yeah," Landon said. "I think I am." His phone buzzed. "Marcus." "Graham just got into a car with someone," Marcus said. "Big guy, Eastern European looking. I got photos. Sending them now." The photos came through. Landon's stomach dropped. The man in the pictures was the same one from the restaurant security footage. Same build, same bearing, and on his wrist, clear as day, was Graham's watch. Victor Petrov. "They're heading north," Marcus continued. "Want me to follow?" "No, stay on Elena. I think they're going to make another move soon." "What kind of move?" Landon looked around the restaurant, at the normal people having normal lunches, laughing and talking and living their lives. No idea that just a few feet away, someone was planning a murder. "I don't know," Landon said, "but we need to be ready." The attack came from a direction Landon never saw coming. Not poison this time. Not a staged accident or a hired killer in the shadows. Graham had shifted tactics, and by the time Landon realized what was happening, the damage was already spreading like fire through dry brush. It started with a phone call from his lawyer at 6 in the morning, 2 days after the disastrous lunch meeting. Landon was making Sophie breakfast, poorly scrambled eggs that looked more like yellow rubber. when his phone lit up with David Chen's name. "Turn on the news," David said without preamble. "Channel 7, now!" Landon grabbed the remote with one hand, phone pressed to his ear with the other. Sophie was coloring at the kitchen table, humming something off-key, completely absorbed in turning a dinosaur purple. The news anchors appeared on screen, sitting behind their desk with the kind of serious expressions that meant something bad. Really bad. "Breaking news this morning in the ongoing investigation into Pierce Industries," the woman said. "Federal prosecutors have confirmed they're looking into allegations of securities fraud, embezzlement, and money laundering involving CEO Landon Pierce." Landon's hand went numb. The remote clattered to the counter. "Sources close to the investigation tell us the probe centers on offshore accounts and suspicious financial transactions dating back at least 2 years," the anchor continued. "Pierce Industries, valued at over $3 billion, has been a fixture of Seattle's tech sector since—" Landon muted it. His heart was hammering so hard he could feel it in his throat. "David," he managed, "what the hell is this?" "I've been on the phone with the prosecutors since 5 a.m. They have documents, Landon, bank records, emails, wire transfers. Someone's been feeding them information." "What information? I haven't done anything wrong." "I know that, but they have evidence that suggests otherwise. Those offshore accounts we found Graham using, they're in your name. The shell companies? You're listed as the primary beneficiary. On paper, it looks like you've been siphoning company money for years." The kitchen tilted. Landon gripped the counter to steady himself. "That's impossible. Graham set those up. I believe you, but proving it is going to be a nightmare. Whoever did this was smart, really smart. They've created a paper trail that leads straight to you." Sophie looked up from her coloring. "Daddy, are you okay?" Landon forced a smile. "Fine, sweetheart. Just work stuff. Keep coloring." She went back to her dinosaur, satisfied. Kids were easy that way. Tell them you're fine and they believed you, even when you were falling apart. "What do I do?" Landon asked David quietly, turning away from Sophie. "For now? Nothing. Don't talk to the press. Don't talk to anyone at the company. Don't make any statements. I'm filing motions to block the indictment, but, Landon, I have to be honest. This looks bad. Really bad. If they decide to arrest you—" "Arrest me?" Landon's voice came out strangled. "It's a possibility. Securities fraud is federal. If they think you're a flight risk—" "I have a 6-year-old daughter. Where am I going to fly to?" "I know. I'm just telling you what we're dealing with." Landon ended the call and stood there in his kitchen, watching Sophie color her purple dinosaur, listening to her hum, and felt everything he'd built start to crumble. This was Graham's plan B. If he couldn't kill Landon, he'd destroy him another way. Frame him for crimes he didn't commit, force him out of his own company, take control of everything while Landon rotted in a federal prison. It was brilliant, in a sick kind of way. His phone started ringing. "Rachel." He answered. "The board just called an emergency meeting," she said. Her voice was tight, controlled. "They want you there in an hour." "What are they going to do?" "I think they're going to ask you to step down, temporarily, until this investigation is resolved." "Rachel, I know you didn't do this. Whatever the news is saying, whatever evidence they have, I know you. But Landon, the optics are killing us. The stock dropped 12% in the first hour of trading. Our biggest clients are calling, asking questions. The board has to do something." Landon looked at Sophie. She'd moved on from the dinosaur and was now drawing what looked like a rocket ship, or maybe a tree. It was hard to tell. "Tell them I'll be there," he said. After Rachel hung up, Landon called Teresa. She arrived within 20 minutes, took one look at his face, and didn't ask questions. Just swept Sophie up for an impromptu adventure to the science center, leaving Landon alone in a house that suddenly felt too big and too quiet. He drove to the office through a gauntlet of news vans. Reporters shouted questions he didn't answer. Cameras tracked his every step. By the time he reached the executive floor, his jaw hurt from clenching it so hard. The board was already assembled in the main conference room. 12 people who'd trusted him to grow their investments, to make them richer, to turn Pierce Industries into a powerhouse. Now they sat around the long table looking at him like he was something that had crawled out of the sewer. Graham was there too, sitting at the far end. He met Landon's eyes with an expression of carefully constructed concern. "Landon," said Margaret Fowler, the board chair. She was 70, steel-haired, sharp as broken glass. Thank you for coming. Like I had a choice. Margaret didn't smile. We need to discuss the allegations. They're false. I'm sure they are. But the fact remains we have federal prosecutors making very serious claims. We have evidence that suggests financial impropriety, and we have a responsibility to our shareholders. Landon sat down, looked around the table at faces he'd known for years. Some avoided his gaze. Others stared back with varying degrees of sympathy or suspicion. I've been set up, Landon said flatly. Someone's been using company resources to build a case against me. Someone who wants me out. That's a serious accusation, said Robert Kim, the CFO. Do you have proof? I'm working on it. That's not good enough, Margaret said. We need concrete evidence and we need it now. Until then, we have to consider the company's best interests. My best interests are the company's best interests. I built this place. Your father built it, Graham said quietly. Everyone turned to look at him. He was leaning back in his chair, hands folded, looking like he was discussing the weather. What? Landon said. Your father built Pierce Industries. You inherited it. There's a difference. Graham's voice was calm, reasonable. And maybe that's part of the problem. Maybe you never really had the hunger for it, the drive. Maybe that's why you got sloppy with the finances. Landon wanted to vault across the table and put his hands around Graham's throat. Instead, he said, very quietly, You son of a bitch. Landon, Margaret warned, no, you need to hear this. Landon stood up. Graham's been stealing from this company for over a year, moving money through offshore accounts, setting up shell corporations, building a network of fraudulent investments. And he's been doing it all in my name. That's absurd, Graham said, but there was something in his eyes now, something cold and sharp. Is it? Because I have documentation, bank records, emails, phone logs showing you've been in contact with some very questionable people. Then why haven't you shared this documentation with us? Margaret asked. Because I wanted to be sure. Because Graham's my partner and my friend. And I wanted to believe there was some other explanation. Landon looked directly at Graham. But there isn't, is there? You've been planning this for months, maybe years. The merger deal, the offshore accounts, all of it. It was never about growing the company. It was about taking it from me. Graham stood up slowly. This is what happens when pressure breaks someone. They start seeing conspiracies everywhere. Landon, I understand you're under stress. The investigation, the media attention, it's a lot. But making wild accusations isn't going to help. I have proof. Then show it to us. Landon opened his mouth, then closed it. Because the truth was, he didn't have the proof here. It was with Marcus, being compiled into something presentable, documents and recordings and financial trails that would take hours to explain. And Graham knew it. I thought so, Graham said softly. Margaret, I move that we suspend Landon as CEO pending the outcome of the federal investigation, for the good of the company. Seconded, said Robert immediately. Margaret looked at Landon with something that might have been pity. All in favor? 7 hands went up. Not quite a majority, but enough. Landon watched his company slip away in a simple show of hands. The motion passes, Margaret said. Landon, you're suspended effective immediately. Graham will serve as interim CEO until this matter is resolved. Of course he would. That had been the plan all along. Landon gathered what was left of his dignity and walked out. No one followed him. No one said they believed him or that they'd fight for him. They just sat there, relieved to have made a decision, any decision, that might stop the bleeding. In the elevator down, Landon's phone rang. Marcus. I saw the news, Marcus said. Where are you? Leaving the office. They suspended me. Graham's taking over. Landon, we need to talk. I found something big. What? Not over the phone. Where's Sophie? With Teresa. Why? Marcus, is she safe? For now. But we need to move fast. Meet me at the safe house. 30 minutes. Marcus hung up before Landon could ask what safe house. But a text came through immediately with an address in Fremont. Landon got in his car and drove, checking his mirrors constantly, half expecting to see Victor Petrov following him. The safe house turned out to be a nondescript apartment above a Vietnamese restaurant. Marcus met him at the door, ushered him inside quickly. The apartment was sparse. A couch, a table, Equipment that looked like it belonged in a spy movie. What is this place? Landon asked. Somewhere off the grid. I use it for surveillance jobs. No one knows about it except me and my team. Marcus pulled out a laptop and opened it. You need to see this. He played a recording, audio only, scratchy, like it had been captured from a distance. But the voices were clear enough. Graham's voice. The federal investigation is moving faster than expected. They'll arrest him by the end of the week. A second voice, accented. Victor. And if he talks? He won't have anyone to talk to. I've made sure of that. The board already thinks he's guilty. The prosecutors have enough evidence to bury him. By the time anyone realizes what really happened, I'll have full control. And the girl? The waitress? A pause. Then Graham. Handle it quietly. The recording ended. Landon sat down on the couch because his legs wouldn't hold him anymore. When was this? He managed. Yesterday. I've had Victor's phone tapped since we identified him. This was a call between him and Graham, probably burner phones, but Victor got careless. He's going after Elena. Yeah, which is why I already moved her. She's safe. But Landon, this recording is gold. It's Graham admitting to framing you, to planning the whole thing. Can we use it? In court? Marcus hesitated. It's complicated. I obtained it through illegal surveillance. Any decent lawyer could get it thrown out. But it's leverage. Proof that you're not crazy. Landon's mind was racing. Graham had outmaneuvered him at every turn. The poisoning that failed. The frame job that succeeded. And now he was cleaning up loose ends, starting with Elena. I need to see her, Landon said. Bad idea. If anyone's watching you, I don't care. Where is she? Marcus sighed. Motel in Renton, room 237. But I'm coming with you. They drove separately. Marcus in his sedan, Landon in his Range Rover, both checking constantly for tails. The motel was exactly what you'd expect for $60 a night. Peeling paint, flickering vacancy sign, the smell of cigarettes baked into the walls. Marcus knocked on room 237. The door opened a crack, chain still attached. Elena's face appeared, pale and drawn. It's okay, Marcus said. It's us. She let them in. The room was depressing, stained carpet, bed that sagged in the middle, TV from 1995. Elena had a duffel bag on the chair, half packed, like she'd been ready to run at any moment. You okay? Landon asked. Elena laughed, sharp and humorless. Am I okay? I'm in a roach motel hiding from a professional killer because I switched a glass of wine, so no, I'm not really okay. I'm sorry, this is my fault. Yeah, it is. She sat down on the bed. What do you want? Landon exchanged a look with Marcus. We have proof that Graham's behind everything. The poisoning, the frame job, all of it. Great, call the cops, get him arrested. Can I go home now? It's not that simple. The evidence was obtained illegally. We need something else, something that ties him to everything in a way that will hold up in court. Elena stared at him. And how are we supposed to get that? We make him confess. Are you out of your mind? Maybe he was. Probably he was. But sitting around waiting for Graham to finish destroying him wasn't an option. I'm going back to Etienne, Landon said. Tomorrow night. I'll tell Graham I want to meet. One last conversation before everything falls apart. I'll wear a wire. Get him talking. He'll never go for it, Marcus said. He's too smart. He will if I give him what he wants. I'll tell him I'm ready to sign the merger papers, that I've accepted defeat, that he won. Graham's ego is his weakness. He'll want to gloat. Elena was shaking her head. This is insane. If he figures out you're recording him, then I'm dead anyway. At least this way, I'm trying. She stood up and paced the small room. And what do you need from me? The same thing as before. Be there. Watch. If something goes wrong, we're all screwed. Elena stopped pacing and looked at him. But I'll do it. Not for you. For me. Because I want my life back. I want to stop looking over my shoulder every 5 seconds. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Thank me if we survive. Landon left Marcus to guard Elena and drove home through evening traffic. His house felt like a museum when he walked in, full of expensive things that didn't matter anymore. He went upstairs to check on Sophie. She was in bed already, Teresa reading to her from some book about a mouse. Daddy! Sophie scrambled out of bed and ran to him. Landon caught her, held her tight, breathing in the smell of her shampoo and childhood and everything he stood to lose. Hey, baby girl, you have fun at the science center? We saw dinosaurs. Well, not real ones, but skeletons. And I learned that T-Rex arms are actually pretty small. Teresa said they're like chicken arms. Landon looked at Teresa over Sophie's head. She gave him a small, sad smile. She'd seen the news. Everyone had seen the news. That's great, sweetheart. Hey, I need to talk to Teresa for a minute, okay? Get back in bed. I'll come tuck you in. Sophie climbed back under her covers. Landon and Teresa stepped into the hallway. I need you to take her somewhere tomorrow, Landon said quietly. Somewhere safe. Maybe your sister's place in Portland? Teresa's eyes widened. Landon, what's happening? I can't explain right now, but please, if something happens to me, if anything goes wrong, I need to know Sophie's protected. You're scaring me. I know. I'm sorry. But will you do it? She nodded slowly. We'll leave first thing in the morning. Thank you. After Teresa left, Landon tucked Sophie in, read her 2 more chapters of the mouse book, and sat on the edge of her bed in the dark. Daddy? Sophie's voice was small. Are you in trouble? Landon's throat tightened. What makes you say that? Teresa's been acting weird, and you're sad. I can tell. Smart kid. Too smart. She got that from Anna, too. Everything's gonna be okay, Landon said, knowing it might be a lie, but saying it anyway because that's what parents did. I promise. Okay. Sophie yawned. I love you, Daddy. I love you too, baby girl, more than anything. He stayed until she fell asleep, watching her breathe, memorizing the shape of her face in the starlight from her ceiling. Then he went downstairs and called Graham. Graham answered on the first ring. Landon, this is a surprise. I want to meet, tomorrow night, Etienne. Just you and me. A pause. What for? To end this. You won, okay? You won. The board suspended me, the investigation's going to destroy me, and you're going to get everything you wanted. So let's make it official. I'll sign whatever papers you want. Just let's do it with some dignity left. Graham was quiet for so long, Landon thought he'd hung up. Then, 8 o'clock? 8 o'clock. I'll be there. The line went dead. Landon sat in his dark living room and wondered if he'd just made the biggest mistake of his life or the smartest move he had left. The next day crawled by like broken glass. Landon watched Teresa drive away with Sophie in the morning, his daughter waving from the back seat, completely unaware she might not see her father again. He met with Marcus to get fitted with a wire, a tiny device that would record everything and transmit it to Marcus's team parked outside the restaurant. You don't have to do this, Marcus said as he taped the wire to Landon's chest. We can find another way. There is no other way. Graham's backed me into a corner. This is the only move I have left. Marcus didn't argue. He just made sure the wire was secure and handed Landon a small panic button disguised as a watch. Anything goes sideways, you press this, we come in heavy. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. Elena arrived at Etienne an hour before Landon. She'd agreed to work another shift, using the same cover story as before. When Landon walked into the restaurant at 7:45, he saw her at the bar, polishing wine glasses with hands that only shook a little. Their eyes met. She gave him a tiny nod. Graham showed up at exactly 8 o'clock. He looked relaxed, confident, wearing a suit that probably cost what Elena made in 6 months. He smiled as he approached the table, and Landon wanted to break every one of his teeth. Landon, good to see you. Wish I could say the same. Graham sat down across from him. Elena appeared moments later with menus. Graham didn't even glance at her. Wine? She asked. Scotch? Graham said. Macallan 25, neat. Water? Landon said. Just water. After Elena left, Graham leaned back and studied Landon with those cold, calculating eyes. You look like hell, Graham said. Wonder why? The investigation? Among other things. Graham's smile widened. It's amazing how quickly things can fall apart, isn't it? One day you're on top of the world. The next, you're facing federal charges. Landon's hand tightened around his water glass. The wire felt hot against his chest. You did this, Landon said quietly. All of it. The offshore accounts, the shell companies, the federal investigation. You set me up. Did I? Graham's expression didn't change. That's a serious accusation, brother. Stop calling me that. You're not my brother. David was my brother, and he's dead. Something flickered across Graham's face. David was a drunk who killed himself and an innocent woman. Don't canonize him just because he's gone. Landon's vision went red. He half stood from his chair before he caught himself. Across the room, he could see Marcus's guys tensing, ready to move. Sit down, Graham said calmly. You're making a scene. Landon sat, forced himself to breathe. The wire was recording everything. He just needed to keep Graham talking. Why? Landon asked. That's what I don't understand. Why go to all this trouble? If you wanted control of the company, we could have worked something out. Could we? Graham picked up the scotch Elena had delivered without him noticing. You really believe that? You, with your billion-dollar inheritance and your tragic dead wife and your perfect daughter? You think you would have just handed over half the company to the guy who grew up in a shitty apartment in Tacoma? We were partners. We were never partners. Not really. You were the golden boy with the famous last name, and I was the smart one who did all the actual work. But who got the credit? Who got the magazine covers and the awards and the reputation? You did. Because your daddy built this company, and everyone assumed you inherited his genius along with his office. Landon stared at him. This is about jealousy? About credit? It's about what I deserve. 8 years, Landon. 8 years I've stood in your shadow, smiling and nodding while everyone treated me like your assistant. Well, guess what? I'm done being the sidekick. So you tried to poison me. Graham took a sip of his scotch. That was plan A. Would have been cleaner. Quick. Sad billionaire dies of heart attack at fancy restaurant. Very tragic. But your little waitress friend screwed that up. He still didn't look at Elena, standing 15 feet away at the service station. To him, she was invisible. Furniture. Not worth noticing. Plan B worked better anyway, Graham continued, framing you for fraud, turning the board against you, taking control while you rot in federal prison. It's poetic, really. You lose everything that matters. Your company, your reputation, your freedom, and I get everything I've earned. The Taiwanese investors, Landon said. They're not real, are they? Oh, they're real. They're just working for me, not with us. Once you're gone, once I have control, they'll withdraw their offer. The company's stock will crash, and I'll buy up the pieces for pennies on the dollar. Landon felt sick. And Sophie? What happens to her when I'm in prison? For the first time, Graham's expression softened, just slightly. Sophie's a good kid. She'll be fine. I'll make sure she's taken care of. Uncle Graham always keeps his promises. You're going to take my daughter. I'm going to provide for her. Give her the stability she'll need when her father's convicted of being a criminal. Graham finished his scotch and signaled for another. Don't worry. She'll have the best schools, the best opportunities. Everything you would have given her. She just won't have you. The wire against Landon's chest felt like it was burning. He had everything. Graham's confession, his motives, his plans. Enough to bury him 100 times over, but Graham wasn't done. The funny thing is, Graham said, leaning forward, you made this so easy. You trusted me, believed in me. Even when the evidence was staring you in the face, you wanted to think the best of me. That's always been your weakness, Landon. You see the world the way you want it to be, not the way it is. And Victor? Landon asked. The Russian? What happens to him when this is over? Graham's smile vanished. How do you know about Victor? Too late. Landon realized his mistake. He shouldn't have known that name, shouldn't have been able to connect those dots unless he'd been investigating, unless he'd been recording. Graham's hand went to his own chest, felt for a wire that wasn't there. Then his eyes swept the restaurant, quick and calculating, looking for... He saw Elena, really saw her this time, and recognition dawned slow and terrible across his face. You, Graham said softly. Elena froze at the service station, wine glass in her hand. Graham stood up. You're the waitress, from that night. You switched my glass. Graham, Landon said, standing too. Don't. But Graham was already moving, fast, purposeful, crossing the restaurant toward Elena. She backed up, dropping the wine glass. It shattered on the floor with a sound like breaking ice. "You ruined everything," Graham said. His voice was quiet, controlled, which somehow made it worse. "Do you have any idea what you cost me?" Marcus's guys were moving now, but the restaurant was crowded, people everywhere, and Graham was closer. Elena kept backing up until she hit the wall. Nowhere left to go. "I'm sorry," she whispered. I saw what you did, and I couldn't mind your own business." Graham reached out. Landon grabbed his arm. "Get away from her." Graham spun, and his fist caught Landon across the jaw. Landon stumbled back, tasting blood. The restaurant erupted in screams. People were running, scrambling for exits. Marcus's guys were shouting, trying to get through the chaos. Graham lunged for Elena again, but she ducked under his arm and ran, straight toward Landon, who caught her, steadied her. "The watch!" Elena gasped. "He's pressing something on his watch." Landon looked. Graham was holding his wrist, pressing the crown of that expensive Patek Philippe, the one Landon had given him, the one that was probably wired to... The lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in, dim and red. And in that crimson glow, Landon saw Viktor Petrov step through the kitchen doors. Viktor moved through the red emergency lighting like a shark through dark water. Big, methodical, his hand inside his jacket where the gun probably was. The kitchen doors swung shut behind him with a soft whoosh that somehow cut through all the screaming. Landon shoved Elena toward the main entrance. "Run, now! What about you? Just go!" But Marcus's guys were already there, forming a wall between Viktor and the crowd. One of them, Jenkins, former Marine, built like a refrigerator, stepped forward with his hand raised. "Sir, I need you to stop right there." Viktor didn't stop, didn't even slow down. He just pulled the gun, sleek, black, fitted with a suppressor, and shot Jenkins in the leg. The sound was a soft cough, barely audible over the chaos. Jenkins went down hard, cursing, grabbing his thigh. The second security guy reached for his own weapon, but Viktor was faster. Another soft cough, and the man crumpled. People were trampling each other trying to reach the exits, tables overturned, wine glasses shattering, someone screaming about calling 911. Landon grabbed Elena's arm and pulled her behind the bar, his heart hammering so hard it hurt. "Graham!" Viktor's voice cut through the noise, thick with accent. "Where?" Landon risked a look over the bar. Graham was gone. Must have slipped out during the panic, leaving Viktor to clean up his mess. Typical. Viktor scanned the restaurant with cold efficiency. His eyes swept past the bar, then came back. Locked on Landon. "You," Viktor said. Landon pressed the panic button on his watch. Wherever Marcus was, help was coming. Probably too late, but coming. Elena's hand found his in the dark. Her fingers were ice cold and shaking. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "This is my fault. If I hadn't—" "Shut up," Landon said, not unkindly. "None of this is your fault." Viktor was walking toward the bar now, gun up, professional. He'd done this before, probably dozens of times. Landon looked around desperately for a weapon, anything, and grabbed a bottle of vodka. Expensive vodka, the kind that cost $200 and came in a fancy crystal bottle. When Viktor rounded the bar, Landon threw it. The bottle caught Viktor in the shoulder, exploded in a spray of glass and alcohol. It didn't hurt him, probably barely registered, but it made him flinch. And in that half second of distraction, Landon lunged. He'd never been in a real fight in his life. Childhood scuffles, sure, but nothing like this. Nothing where losing meant dying. He drove his shoulder into Viktor's chest, tried to grab for the gun. Viktor absorbed the impact like he'd been hit with a pillow and brought the gun around. Landon caught Viktor's wrist, twisted, heard something crack. The gun clattered to the floor. Viktor's other hand came up and grabbed Landon's throat, squeezed. Landon's vision went spotty. He brought his knee up hard between Viktor's legs. Nothing. The guy didn't even grunt. Viktor's grip tightened. Landon could feel his windpipe collapsing, his lungs screaming for air. His hands scrabbled uselessly at Viktor's arm, found nothing to grip. Black spots were spreading across his vision like spilled ink. Then Elena hit Viktor over the head with a wine bottle. It didn't break like in the movies, it just made a solid thunk and bounced off Viktor's skull. but it was enough to make him let go. Landon collapsed, gasping, his throat on fire. Victor turned toward Elena with an expression of mild annoyance. She backed up, holding the bottle like a club, her face white with terror. "Please," she said. "Please don't." Victor reached for her. Gunshots. Real ones this time, loud as thunder. Victor jerked, stumbled, grabbed at his side where blood was spreading across his shirt. He turned. Marcus stood in the doorway, service weapon up, face carved from stone. "Get down!" he shouted at Landon and Elena. They dropped. More gunshots. Victor dove behind the bar as bullets chewed through bottles and glasses above his head. The restaurant smelled like a distillery, alcohol mixing with gunpowder and fear. Marcus advanced carefully, weapon trained on the bar. "It's over! Seattle PD is 2 minutes out. Drop your weapon and come out." For a moment, nothing. Just the sound of liquid dripping and someone crying in the corner and Landon's ragged breathing. Then Victor came up shooting. Marcus fired back, moved, fired again. Victor was hit at least twice more, but kept coming like a machine, like pain was something that happened to other people. He got off 3 shots before Marcus put one through his chest. Victor went down. Stayed down this time. The silence after was deafening. Marcus kicked Victor's gun away, checked for a pulse, shook his head. Then he was pulling Landon up, checking him over. "You okay?" "Landon, talk to me." "Fine," Landon croaked. His throat felt like someone had taken a cheese grater to it. "Elena?" She was sitting on the floor behind the bar, knees pulled to her chest, shaking so hard her teeth chattered. Landon crouched next to her. "Hey, you're okay. It's over." "I hit him," Elena said distantly. "With the bottle. I actually hit him. You saved my life. I broke a $400 bottle of Chateau Margaux." Landon almost laughed. Would have, if his throat didn't hurt so much. "I'll buy them a new one." Sirens were wailing outside now, getting closer. Red and blue lights painted the restaurant walls. The whole place looked like a crime scene because it was a crime scene. Dead body, shot security guards, traumatized witnesses, and somewhere out there, Graham was running. Marcus knelt beside them. "Cops are here. EMTs too. They're going to want statements." "Graham," Landon managed. "He got away." "Not far. I've got people tracking him. Every exit, every road out of the city." Marcus looked at the wire still taped to Landon's chest. "Please tell me that thing's still recording." Landon had forgotten about it. He pressed his hand against his chest, felt the small device, still warm. "Yeah, it got everything. Graham's confession, his plans, all of it." "Good, because we're going to need it." The next few hours were a blur of paramedics and police statements and crime scene tape. Landon's throat was checked, declared bruised but not seriously damaged. Elena was treated for shock, wrapped in one of those foil blankets that made her look like a burrito. Jenkins and the other security guy were loaded into ambulances, both stable but headed for surgery. Detective Sarah Reeves from Seattle PD took Landon's statement in the back of a patrol car. She was mid-40s, tired eyes, the kind of cop who'd seen too much to be surprised by anything anymore. "So let me get this straight," she said, flipping through her notes. "Your business partner tried to poison you, framed you for securities fraud, and hired a professional killer to clean up loose ends? That about covers it. And you have a recording of him confessing to all this?" Landon handed over the wire. Every word. Detective Reeves examined it like it might bite her. "This was obtained through what method?" "Do you really want to know?" She sighed. "Probably not. But my captain's going to ask, and the DA is definitely going to ask. And if this evidence gets thrown out because you did something illegal, it won't matter," Landon interrupted, "because Graham thinks I'm dead, or about to be, which means he's going to make mistakes. He's going to try to consolidate power, move assets, cover his tracks. And when he does, you'll have legitimate grounds to arrest him." Reeves studied him for a long moment. "You've thought about this. I've had a very educational week. Where is he now? Your partner?" "I don't know, but I know someone who might." Landon pulled out his phone and called Rachel. She answered immediately. "Oh my God, I saw the news. Are you okay?" "I'm alive. Rachel, I need you to do something. Check Graham's corporate calendar." Where was he supposed to be tonight after the dinner? "Hold on." The sound of typing. "He had a meeting scheduled. 10 p.m., listed as GV personal. Where? Doesn't say, just has a note. Marina. Landon closed his eyes. Of course. Graham's boat. His precious 40-footer that he'd bought last year and named second place because he thought it was funny. The boat he kept moored at the Marina Park docks. Detective, Landon said. I know where he is. They found Graham exactly where Landon expected him to be, on his boat, trying to start the engine with hands that shook so badly he kept dropping the keys. The Seattle PD Marine Unit had surrounded the dock, lights blazing, officers with weapons drawn. Landon stood on the pier with Marcus and Elena, watching Graham realize he had nowhere left to run. The boat's engine finally roared to life, but there were police boats blocking the harbor entrance. Graham cut the engine, sat there in the captain's chair staring at nothing. Graham Voss, Detective Reeves's voice boomed through a megaphone. Step off the boat with your hands visible. For a long moment, Graham didn't move, just sat there like he was waiting for some brilliant plan to materialize. The plan that would save everything, turn it all around, make him the winner again. But there was no plan. Not anymore. Graham stood up slowly, raised his hands, walked onto the dock where 4 officers immediately surrounded him, weapons up. They cuffed him efficiently, read him his rights in voices devoid of emotion. As they led him past the spot where Landon stood, Graham stopped, made eye contact for the first time since the restaurant. You couldn't just lose, Graham said. His voice was hoarse, defeated. You couldn't just step aside and let me have this. It was never yours to have, Landon said quietly. I built that company as much as you did. More even. But it was always the Pierce Empire. Always your name on the door, your face in the magazines, your legacy. Graham's laugh was bitter. You know what's funny? I didn't even want to kill you at first. I just wanted you gone, out of the picture. But then you had to start digging, had to figure it out, and I thought, fine. If he won't disappear quietly, I'll make him disappear permanently. You hired someone to murder me over your ego. Well, over what I deserved. Graham's composure finally cracked. 8 years. 8 years I've earned this, and you were going to throw it all away because you were too scared to take risks, too comfortable with your little perfect life. I had a daughter to protect. You had everything, Graham was shouting now, straining against the cops holding him. Money, respect, a kid who worships you, and you were just going to coast on your father's name until you died. You didn't deserve any of it. Maybe not, Landon said, but it's mine anyway. The cops pulled Graham toward the waiting patrol car. He was still shouting something about fairness and justice and how Landon would never understand. But Landon wasn't listening anymore. He was watching the boat bob gently in the dark water, thinking about Anna and David and all the people he'd lost who'd actually mattered. Graham wasn't one of them. Detective Reeves approached, tucking her megaphone under one arm. We'll need you to come downtown tomorrow. Full statement, testimony prep, the works. You too, Ms. Hart. Elena nodded wordlessly. She looked exhausted, shell-shocked, like someone who'd just survived a car crash and couldn't quite believe she was still breathing. What happens now, she asked. With the investigation, the fraud charges? If your recording is as good as you say, and if Graham's confession holds up, those charges go away pretty fast. But there'll be hearings, probably a grand jury. This is going to take months to sort out. Months. Landon thought about Sophie in Portland, safe with Teresa, probably asleep right now with her stuffed elephant. Months of testimony and lawyers and media circuses. Months of rebuilding everything Graham had destroyed. But he was alive. Elena was alive. And Graham was in handcuffs. It was a start. They released Landon around 3 a.m. Marcus drove him home through empty streets, neither of them talking much. The house was dark when they arrived, emptier than ever without Sophie's toys scattered around or her voice filling the spaces. I'm posting guards, Marcus said, at least until the trial. Graham might be locked up, but he had connections, people who might decide to finish what he started. Yeah, okay. You should get some sleep. Landon almost laughed. Right, sleep. But he tried anyway. Lay in his bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle, thinking about everything that had happened. Graham's face when they'd arrested him. Victor's cold eyes as he'd squeezed Landon's throat. Elena's hands shaking as she'd switched that first wine glass. The moment that had set all of this in motion. His phone buzzed around 5 a.m. Elena, can't sleep. You? No, he typed back. Keep seeing his face. Victor's. Me too. Also Graham. The way he looked at me. Like I wasn't even human. You saved my life twice. A long pause. Then, you gave me a reason to. Landon stared at that message for a while, trying to figure out what it meant. Before he could respond, another message came through. Thank you. For keeping me safe. For believing me when I said I saw something. Thank you for caring enough to do something about it. What happens now, after all this? Good question. Landon typed and deleted several responses before settling on, I don't know, but we'll figure it out. Together? Yeah, together. He set the phone down and watched the sky lighten outside his window. Somewhere in the city, Graham was sitting in a cell, probably still convinced he'd been wronged, probably already planning his defense, his comeback, his next move. But Landon was done playing chess with him, done trying to stay 3 moves ahead of someone who saw everything as a game to be won. He just wanted his daughter back, his company back, his life back, and maybe, if he was very lucky, a chance to figure out what came next with a woman who'd risked everything to save a stranger. The next few days were a whirlwind of lawyers and depositions and news crews camped outside his house. The recording of Graham's confession had leaked. Landon suspected Marcus, though he couldn't prove it, and the media had latched onto the story like sharks on blood. Billionaire betrayed by best friend. Tech CEO's murder plot exposed. The Pierce Empire strikes back. Landon ignored most of it. He focused on getting Sophie home, on sitting with her in her room while she told him about Portland and Teresa's sister's dog and how she'd learned to make pancakes that were only a little bit burned. Are the bad guys gone? Sophie asked one night as he was tucking her in. Landon brushed her hair back from her forehead. Yeah, baby, they're gone. All of them? All of them. She seemed satisfied with that, closed her eyes, already drifting off. Daddy, can we go to the aquarium this weekend? You promised. Absolutely, first thing Saturday morning. And can Elena come? Landon paused. How do you know about Elena? Teresa told me. She said Elena's your friend, the one who helped you when Uncle Graham was being mean. Uncle Graham? Sophie didn't know the half of it, didn't know that her Uncle Graham had tried to kill her father, had hired a professional killer, had planned to steal everything, and Landon would make sure she never knew. Some burdens were too heavy for 6-year-olds to carry. Yeah, Landon said quietly. Elena helped me. She's very brave. So can she come? To the aquarium? I'll ask her. Sophie smiled, already half asleep. Good. I want to meet her. After Sophie drifted off, Landon went downstairs and found Elena sitting in his living room. She'd been coming over more often lately, usually late at night when neither of them could sleep. They'd sit and talk about nothing important, weather, books, what color Sophie should paint her room, carefully avoiding the subject of dead Russians and attempted murder. Sophie wants to meet you, Anne, Landon said, dropping onto the couch beside her. Elena looked up from the magazine she wasn't really reading. Really? Really? She asked if you could come to the aquarium with us this weekend. That's a big step. Meeting the daughter. Only if you want to, no pressure. Elena was quiet for a moment, staring at the magazine in her lap. I'm a waitress, Landon. I live in a studio apartment with unreliable heat. My car makes a noise like it's dying. What am I supposed to talk to a 6-year-old billionaire's daughter about? She's 6. Talk to her about dinosaurs or space, or why purple is the best color. She's not that complicated. You know what I mean? Landon did know. He understood the gap between their worlds, the difference between growing up with money and growing up without it. But he also understood that Elena had proven herself in ways that mattered more than bank accounts. Come to the aquarium, he said. If it's weird, if it doesn't work, that's fine. But give it a chance. Elena looked at him. Really looked at him. The way she'd looked at that wine glass the night this all started, seen something no one else saw. Okay, she said finally. I'll come. Saturday morning was clear and cold. The kind of Seattle winter day where the sun came out just long enough to remind you what you'd been missing. Landon picked up Elena at her apartment. She'd been right about the building. It was terrible. And they drove to the aquarium together while Sophie chattered nonstop from the back seat about sea otters. Elena was nervous. Landon could tell by the way she kept smoothing her jeans, adjusting her jacket, checking her reflection in the window. But when they got to the aquarium and Sophie grabbed her hand to drag her toward the tide pools, Elena's smile was genuine. They spent 3 hours looking at fish and octopi and sea anemones that looked like flowers but weren't. Sophie peppered Elena with questions. Why are jellyfish see-through? Do sharks really eat people? Can you keep a penguin as a pet? And Elena answered them all with patience Landon hadn't expected. At the shark tank, while Sophie pressed her face against the glass, Elena stood beside Landon. She's amazing, Elena said quietly. You're lucky. I know. Does she know about what happened? Just that some people tried to hurt me and you helped stop them. The details can wait until she's older. Maybe a lot older. Elena nodded. They watched Sophie watch the sharks glide through the water like gray ghosts. The trial starts next month, Landon said. The DA thinks it'll be open and shut. Graham's confession, the evidence, Victor's involvement, but it's still going to be ugly. A lot of media attention, a lot of questions. I can handle it. I know you can. I'm just saying, if it gets too heavy, if you need space, Landon. Elena turned to face him. I hit a professional killer with a wine bottle. I think I can handle some reporters. He smiled. Fair point. Besides, Elena continued, I already quit my job at Etienne. Kind of hard to go back after the whole shootout thing, so I have some free time on my hands. What are you going to do? I don't know yet. Maybe take some classes. You were right. I do notice things. Details other people miss. Maybe I could do something with that. I could use someone like that at the company. Someone who's not afraid to speak up when something's wrong. Elena raised an eyebrow. Are you offering me a job? I'm offering you options. Whatever you want to do, wherever you want to go, I'll support it. You saved my life, Elena. Twice. That's worth more than money. But money's what I have, so you're going to throw cash at me until the guilt goes away? Something like that? She laughed. Actually laughed, the first time he'd heard it sound real and unforced. You're terrible at this. At what? At saying thank you without making it weird. Yeah, well, I haven't had a lot of practice. Sophie came running back, breathless with excitement about a sea turtle that looked like it was smiling. She grabbed both their hands and pulled them toward the next exhibit, talking a mile a minute about turtle shells and ocean currents. And could they please get ice cream after this? Landon looked at Elena over his daughter's head. She looked back, and something passed between them. Not romance, not yet, just understanding. The kind that came from surviving something impossible together. That night, after they'd dropped Elena off and gotten Sophie into bed, Landon's lawyer called. Graham's trying to make a deal, David Chen said. Reduce the charges in exchange for returning the stolen money and testifying about his offshore partners. No deal, Landon said immediately. Landon, think about this. A trial could drag on for months, maybe years. Appeals, motions, media coverage. Is that really what you want Sophie exposed to? Landon thought about his daughter asleep upstairs, about the aquarium and the sea turtles and the way she'd held Elena's hand like it was the most natural thing in the world. Graham tried to kill me, Landon said quietly. He hired a professional killer. He put Elena in danger. He would have destroyed everything my father built. So, no deal. I want him to face every single charge. I want him in prison for the rest of his life. And I want everyone to know exactly what he did. David was quiet for a moment. Okay, I'll tell the DA. Thank you. After he hung up, Landon went to Sophie's room. She was asleep, arms wrapped around her elephant, her nightlight painting constellations across the ceiling. He stood in the doorway watching her breathe, thinking about all the ways this could have ended differently. Graham could have succeeded. Victor could have been faster. Elena could have decided it wasn't her problem and walked away. But none of those things had happened. Against all odds, Landon had survived. His daughter was safe. His company was his again. And somewhere across the city, a woman who made $12 an hour plus tips was probably still awake, staring at her ceiling, wondering what came next. Landon pulled out his phone and sent her a message. "Thank you. For today. Sophie loved meeting you." The response came quickly. "I loved meeting her too. She's lucky to have you." "I'm the lucky one," Landon typed. Then, before he could overthink it, "Dinner tomorrow? Just us?" 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Like a date? Like a thank you. That doesn't make it weird. "You're terrible at this, so you've mentioned." Another pause, then, "Okay. Dinner. But somewhere cheap. I don't trust expensive restaurants anymore." Landon smiled. "Deal." He put his phone away and went back to watching Sophie sleep. Outside, Seattle was doing what Seattle did, existing in that space between rain and sunshine, between tech billions and struggling artists, between the life you planned and the life you got. Graham was locked up in King County Jail, probably still convinced he'd been wronged, still plotting his comeback. Victor was in the morgue, reduced to a case number and a file. And Landon was standing in his daughter's doorway at midnight, thinking about a woman who'd saved his life with nothing more than courage and a switched wine glass. Not a bad ending, all things considered. Not an ending at all, really, just a beginning. The trial started on a Tuesday in February, 6 months after the night Victor died on the restaurant floor. Landon sat in the front row of the courtroom, watching Graham walk in wearing an orange jumpsuit that washed out his complexion and made him look smaller somehow, diminished, like someone had taken the air out of him and left just the shell. Their eyes met across the room. Graham's expression was unreadable, not angry, not remorseful, just blank. Like he'd already checked out, already moved past this into whatever reality he'd constructed, where none of this was his fault. Elena sat beside Landon, hands folded in her lap, dressed in a simple gray suit that she'd bought specifically for this. Her first suit ever, she'd told him. It made her look older, more serious, like someone who belonged in a courtroom instead of carrying plates of overpriced food. "You okay?" Landon asked quietly. "Ask me after I testify." The prosecution's case was devastating. They started with the financial records. Marcus had been thorough, every offshore account traced, every shell company exposed. The assistant DA, a sharp woman named Patricia Torres, walked the jury through Graham's scheme step by step. How he'd been siphoning money for 18 months, how he'd built the framework to frame Landon, how he'd positioned himself to take control once Landon was destroyed. Then came the attempted poisoning. They showed the restaurant security footage, grainy but clear enough. The man with Graham's watch dropping something into Landon's wine glass. Elena switching it. The whole thing playing out in silence while the jury watched. When it was Elena's turn to testify, she walked to the stand with her shoulders back and her head up. She looked terrified, but she didn't let it stop her. "Ms. Hart," Patricia Torres began, "can you tell the jury what you witnessed on the night of November 3rd? Elena took a breath. "I saw a man poison Mr. Pierce's wine. He walked past their table and dropped something into the glass. A pill or powder, I couldn't tell, but it was deliberate, practiced." "What did you do?" "I switched the glass. Told them there was a mistake with the vintage and brought a new one." "Why didn't you alert the authorities?" Elena's hands tightened on the witness stand rail. "Because I'm a waitress making minimum wage. I thought nobody would believe me. I thought I'd lose my job, but I couldn't let him drink it." "So you intervened?" "Yes." Graham's lawyer, a slick guy named Harrison Reed, who probably cost $500 an hour, stood for cross-examination. He smiled at Elena like they were old friends. "Ms. Hart, isn't it true that you've been in a relationship with Mr. Pierce since these events occurred?" Elena's face flushed. "We've been seeing each other, yes." "And isn't it true that Mr. Pierce has given you substantial financial support, paid for your apartment, your education?" "He offered to help after I lost my job because of all this." "So you have a financial interest in Mr. Pierce's version of events being believed." "Objection," Patricia Torres said sharply. "Argumentative." "Sustained," the judge said. But the damage was done. Harrison Reed had planted the seed that Elena was just a gold digger who'd latched onto a billionaire and would say anything to keep the money flowing. Landon watched Elena's face go pale, watched her struggle to maintain composure. He wanted to stand up, to tell the jury that Elena had saved his life before she'd ever known his net worth, before there was anything in it for her except danger. But he couldn't. All he could do was sit there and watch Harrison Reed try to tear her apart. When Elena stepped down from the witness stand, she walked past Graham without looking at him. But Graham looked at her, really looked, with an expression that made Landon's blood run cold. Not angry, not hateful, just calculating, like he was working out a puzzle, figuring out how to use this new information. Landon testified the next day. He walked through everything: the dinner, the confrontation, Graham's confession. He stayed calm, factual. Didn't let Harrison Reed bait him into losing his temper. "Mr. Pierce," Reed said during the cross-examination, "isn't it true that you illegally surveilled my client, tapped his phones, hacked his accounts?" "I hired a security consultant to investigate suspicious activity." "Illegal activity, you mean? Activity that obtained evidence through methods that violate federal wiretapping laws." "I was trying to stay alive." "Were you, or were you trying to eliminate a business rival who'd become too successful, too threatening to your control of the company?" Landon leaned forward. "Your client tried to kill me, twice. He framed me for crimes I didn't commit. He hired a professional killer who shot 3 people. Don't talk to me about illegal activity." "Objection," Reed shouted. "Sustained. Mr. Pierce, please limit your responses to the questions asked." But the jury had heard it. They'd seen Landon's face, the barely controlled anger of someone who'd been betrayed by the person he'd trusted most. The trial dragged on for 3 weeks. Witnesses, evidence, expert testimony about poisons and offshore banking and corporate fraud. Marcus testified about the surveillance, admitting straight up that, yeah, some of it was illegal, but he'd stand by it. Jenkins testified from a wheelchair, his leg still healing, about getting shot trying to protect Landon. And through it all, Graham sat at the defense table looking like someone watching a movie about someone else's life. Detached, uninvolved, like this was all very interesting but had nothing to do with him. The prosecution's final witness was a forensic accountant who connected every dollar, every transaction, every lie back to Graham. By the time she was done, the jury looked exhausted. Harrison Reed's closing argument tried to paint Graham as a scapegoat, an ambitious partner, sure, maybe aggressive with business tactics, but not a murderer, just someone who'd been caught in a billionaire's paranoid conspiracy theories. Patricia Torres's closing demolished that. She played the audio of Graham's confession at the restaurant, his voice clear and cold as he described framing Landon, hiring Victor, planning to take Sophie if Landon went to prison. "Members of the jury," Torres said, "this isn't a case about business rivalry gone wrong. This is about a man who decided murder was an acceptable business strategy, who looked at his partner, his friend, and saw only an obstacle to be removed. Graham Voss didn't just betray Landon Pierce, he tried to erase him. And when that didn't work, he tried to destroy him. The evidence is overwhelming. The confession is clear. Your verdict should be too." The jury deliberated for 2 days. Landon spent that time in a kind of limbo, unable to work, unable to focus on anything except waiting. Elena stayed with him and Sophie, the 3 of them falling into a strange domestic routine that felt both natural and surreal. Sophie had accepted Elena's presence without question, the way kids did. Elena was just part of their lives now, helping with homework, reading bedtime stories, teaching Sophie how to make pancakes that were only slightly less burned than Teresa's sisters. "What if they acquit him?" Elena asked one night after Sophie was asleep. They were sitting on Landon's back deck, watching the lights across Lake Washington, sharing a bottle of wine that neither of them was really drinking. "They won't." "But what if they do?" Landon didn't have an answer for that. Couldn't let himself think about Graham walking free, going back to his life, maybe trying again. "Then we deal with it," he said finally. "Together." Elena looked at him. "Is that what we are? Together?" "I don't know. Are we?" "You're doing it again." "Doing what?" "Making it weird." Landon smiled despite himself. "Yeah, I guess I am." Elena shifted closer, leaned her head against his shoulder. "For what it's worth, I think we are. Together, even if you are terrible at saying it. I'm working on that. Work faster." They sat like that for a while, not talking, just existing in the same space. It wasn't perfect. Nothing about their situation was perfect, but it was real. And after everything they'd been through, real was enough. The verdict came down on a Friday afternoon. Landon got the call from Patricia Torres while he was picking Sophie up from school. "Guilty," she said. "All counts. Attempted murder, conspiracy, fraud, everything." Landon had to pull over because his hands were shaking too badly to drive. "What's the sentence?" "Won't know until next month. But we're looking at 25 to life." "He's done, Landon. He's never getting out." After he hung up, Landon sat in his car outside Sophie's school and cried. Not because he was happy, though he was, but because it was finally over. The threat was gone. Graham couldn't hurt them anymore. Sophie came running across the parking lot with her backpack bouncing, Teresa trailing behind her. She climbed into the car, chattering about her day, completely unaware that her father had just won the biggest battle of his life. "Can Elena come for dinner?" Sophie asked. "I want to show her my science project." "Yeah," Landon said, his voice rough. "Yeah, I think she can come." The sentencing hearing was less dramatic than the trial. Graham stood before the judge, looking smaller than ever, listening as Patricia Torres outlined every crime, every victim, every consequence of his actions. "Mr. Voss," the judge said when it was his turn to speak, "do you have anything to say before I impose sentence?" Graham was quiet for a long moment. Then he turned and looked directly at Landon. "I meant what I said," Graham said quietly. "About deserving it. I built that company as much as you did. I earned a place at the top. But you were always going to be the golden boy, the heir, the one everyone respected. And I was always going to be the guy from Tacoma who got lucky. That's what you never understood. It was never just about the money or the power. It was about being seen, about mattering." "You mattered," Landon said, surprising himself. "You were my partner, my friend. I valued you, respected you. If you just talked to me, would you have given me half the company? Really? Be honest." Landon thought about it. "No, probably not. But we could have worked something out. We didn't have to end up here." Graham smiled, but it was sad. "Yeah, we did. Because guys like you don't share." "Not really. You think you do, but when it comes down to it, you hold on to what's yours. And I was tired of being yours. I wanted to be mine." The judge cleared her throat. "Mr. Voss, I've heard enough. Based on the severity of your crimes and the calculated nature of your actions, I'm sentencing you to 28 years in federal prison without possibility of parole for 25 years. In addition, you're ordered to pay full restitution for all stolen funds and damages. Do you understand?" Graham nodded. Didn't argue. Just nodded and let them lead him away. Landon watched him go and felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not anger, not even pity. Just a hollow kind of relief that it was finally finished. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed with cameras and microphones and questions Landon didn't answer. Marcus cleared a path to the car, and they drove away from the circus, leaving it all behind. Elena was waiting at his house when he got there. She'd picked Sophie up from school, and they were in the kitchen making what smelled like pizza from scratch. Badly, judging by the smoke. "We tried to surprise you," Elena said, opening windows to air out the kitchen. "Surprise?" Sophie looked up from the counter where she was covered in flour. "The cheese burned, but only a little bit." Landon looked at them. This woman who'd saved his life, and this daughter who was his whole world, and felt something shift in his chest, something that felt like the future instead of the past. "It's perfect," he said. They ordered actual pizza after the homemade disaster proved inedible, ate it in the living room while Sophie told them about fractions, and her friend Madison, who could burp the alphabet. Normal stuff, easy stuff, the kind of evening Landon had thought he'd lost forever. After Sophie went to bed, Landon and Elena sat on the couch with the news on low, showing footage of Graham being led away in chains. "How do you feel?" Elena asked. "Tired? Relieved? I don't know. How do you feel?" "The same. And scared." "Of what?" Elena gestured at the house, the expensive furniture, the view. "This. Us. What happens now that the crisis is over?" "We met because someone tried to kill you. We bonded over staying alive." "What if that's all we have?" Landon had worried about the same thing. Late at night, when he couldn't sleep, He'd wondered if what he felt for Elena was real or just gratitude mixed with trauma bonding. "I don't think it is," he said slowly. "I think we started there, yeah. But it's more than that now. At least for me." "What is it then?" "I don't know. Something real. Something that scares me because I haven't felt it since Anna died. But it's there." Elena looked at him for a long time. "I'm not her, you know. I'm never going to be the perfect CEO's wife who knows which fork to use at fancy dinners. I don't fit in your world." "I don't want you to fit. I want you to be you. The woman who hits professional killers with wine bottles, who saves lives and makes terrible pancakes and treats my daughter like she matters." "She does matter." "I know. And so do you." Elena leaned in and kissed him. Not the tentative, careful kisses they'd shared before, but something deeper. Something that felt like a decision being made. When they broke apart, she was smiling. "You're getting better at this." "At what?" "Not making it weird." The weeks after the sentencing blurred together in a mess of lawyers and accountants and board meetings. The company had survived Graham's attempt to destroy it, but just barely. Stock prices were still recovering. Clients were still nervous. Landon had to rebuild trust one handshake at a time. Margaret Fowler called him into the boardroom 6 weeks after the trial ended. She sat at the head of the table looking like she'd aged 5 years in 5 months. "The board has voted," she said without preamble. "You're reinstated as CEO. Full authority, full backing. We owe you an apology, Landon. We should have trusted you. You did what you thought was right for the company. We threw you under the bus at the first sign of trouble. That's not the same thing." Margaret slid a folder across the table. "We'd like to make it up to you. New contract, better terms, and a seat on the board that can't be voted out. You've earned it." Landon opened the folder, scanned the terms. They were generous, more than generous. But there was something else he wanted more than money or board seats. "I want to create a new position," he said. "Vice President of Corporate Ethics. Someone whose job is to notice things others miss. To speak up when something's wrong. To make sure we never end up here again. Do you have someone in mind?" "I might." Margaret smiled. "Then make it happen." Landon offered Elena the job that night over dinner at a small Italian place that didn't have chandeliers or sommeliers or wine lists that required a PhD to understand. Just good food and reasonable prices and waiters who looked happy to be there. "You want me to be VP of what?" Elena asked, nearly choking on her pasta. "Corporate ethics. You'd be in charge of oversight, compliance, making sure everyone follows the rules, making sure another Graham never happens." "Landon, I don't have an MBA. I barely finished community college. I don't know anything about corporate structures or you know how to notice things, details other people miss. You know when something's wrong, even if you can't explain why. That's worth more than any business degree." Elena set down her fork. "This is because you feel guilty. This is because you're qualified. And because I trust you. And yeah, maybe because I want you close. Is that so bad?" "What if I'm terrible at it?" "Then we'll figure it out, together, like we've been doing." Elena was quiet for a long time, turning her wine glass in circles on the table. "Okay," she said finally, "but I'm taking classes, getting a real degree. I'm not going to be the diversity hire who got the job because she's sleeping with the boss." "We're not sleeping together." "Not yet, but give it time. You're getting less weird by the day." Landon laughed, and it felt good. Easy. Like something he used to know how to do before everything went to hell. 6 months later, on a Saturday morning in August, Landon woke up to Sophie jumping on his bed. "Daddy, Elena's making real pancakes, not burned ones." Landon opened one eye. "What time is it?" 7. "Come on." He dragged himself downstairs to find Elena in the kitchen, actually making pancakes that looked edible. She'd moved in 2 months ago, slowly at first, a drawer of clothes here, a toothbrush there, until one day she was just there. Part of the house. Part of their lives. "Morning," she said, flipping a pancake with more confidence than he'd seen before. "Sophie requested chocolate chips. I'm trying to negotiate down to blueberries." "I'll take whatever doesn't poison me." Elena threw a dish towel at him. "Still not funny." But she was smiling. They ate breakfast on the back deck, Sophie chattering about her upcoming birthday party and whether they should get a bouncy house or a petting zoo. Landon and Elena exchanged looks over her head, The kind of silent communication that came from months of living together, of learning each other's rhythms and moods and tells. After breakfast, after Sophie ran off to play in the yard, Elena turned to Landon with an expression he couldn't quite read. "I have something to tell you," she said. Landon's stomach dropped. "Okay. I got accepted." "Accepted to what?" "The MBA program at UW. Full scholarship. Starts in September." Landon felt relief wash over him so hard he almost laughed. "That's amazing. Why do you look nervous?" "Because it's a 2-year program, nights and weekends. I'll be gone a lot. And I know Sophie's used to me being around, and I don't want to—" Landon kissed her. Right there on the deck, with Sophie, probably watching from the yard, and the neighbors probably watching from their houses, and the whole world able to see. When they broke apart, Elena looked dazed. "What was that for?" "For worrying about my daughter, for wanting to better yourself, for being you. You're getting really good at not making it weird. I've had a good teacher." They sat there for a while, watching Sophie chase butterflies across the lawn, listening to the lake lap against the shore behind them. It wasn't perfect. Elena would be stressed with school. Sophie would struggle sometimes with sharing her father. Landon would still have nightmares about Victor's hands around his throat. But it was real. And it was theirs. That night, after Sophie was asleep, Landon found Elena on the deck again, staring out at the water. "You okay?" he asked, just thinking about that night at the restaurant. If I'd made a different choice, if I'd just ignored what I saw and kept walking. "But you didn't." "No, I didn't." Elena turned to face him. "Do you ever wonder why? Why I did it? I've been asking myself that for months." "What's the answer?" "I think it's because I was tired of being invisible, of being the person nobody noticed. And for once, I saw something that mattered, something I could do something about. And I thought, what if I matter too? What if I'm not just furniture?" Landon pulled her close. "You were never furniture. You saved my life. You saved my daughter's father. You mattered then, and you matter now." "I know. Took me a while to believe it, but I know." They stood there on the deck as the sun went down over Seattle, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple. Somewhere in the city, Graham was in a prison cell, probably still convinced he'd been wronged. Somewhere else, people were having dinners and making deals and building empires that would probably crumble like all empires did. But here, in this moment, Landon had everything that mattered, his daughter asleep upstairs, the woman he loved beside him, a future that wasn't mapped out or planned, but was theirs to figure out together. "Hey," Elena said softly. "Yeah?" "I love you, just in case you were wondering." Landon smiled. "I love you too." "See, that wasn't weird at all. I'm learning." Sophie's birthday party 2 weeks later was chaos in the best way. 20 kids, a bouncy house, she'd won that argument, pizza, and a cake shaped like the solar system that cost an obscene amount of money but made Sophie's face light up like Christmas. Elena helped coordinate everything, running around with a checklist and a growing sense of panic as kids spilled juice and tracked mud and generally destroyed the backyard. "Is it always like this?" she asked Landon at one point, looking slightly shell-shocked. "This is actually pretty tame. Last year someone threw up on the magician." "Oh my God." But she was smiling. Even covered in frosting and exhausted, she was smiling. When it came time for Sophie to blow out the candles, she made Landon and Elena stand on either side of her. The cameras caught it. Sophie flanked by the two most important people in her world, all of them grinning like idiots as she made her wish. Later, after the guests had gone and the yard was mostly cleaned up, Landon found Sophie sitting on her bed surrounded by presents. "Did you have a good birthday?" he asked. "The best." She looked up at him with Anna's eyes. "Daddy? Is Elena going to stay? Like forever?" Landon sat down beside her. "Would you want her to?" "Yeah, she's nice. And she makes you smile more." "She does, doesn't she?" "So is she staying?" "I think so. If that's okay with you." Sophie threw her arms around his neck. "It's okay with me." That night, after Sophie finally crashed from the sugar high, Landon found Elena in the kitchen putting away the last of the party supplies. "Sophie asked if you're staying," he said. Elena froze with a stack of paper plates in her hands. "What did you tell her?" "That I thought you were. Was I wrong?" Elena set down the plates and turned to face him. A year ago, I was serving wine to people who didn't see me, living in an apartment with rats, wondering if this was all my life would ever be. And then I switched one glass, and everything changed. For me too. I know. And sometimes I still can't believe this is real, that I'm standing in this kitchen in this house with this life. But I don't want to go back. I don't want to be invisible anymore. You're not. You never were. I just didn't see you until you made me look. Elena crossed the kitchen and kissed him. Not tentative this time, not careful, just sure. Yeah, she said when they broke apart. I'm staying. 3 months later, on a Thursday afternoon in November, Landon got a call from the prison. Graham wanted to see him. One final conversation before he disappeared into the federal system for the next quarter century. Landon almost said no, almost hung up and went back to his life and never thought about Graham again. But something made him say yes. Maybe closure, maybe morbid curiosity, maybe just the need to see it with his own eyes, that Graham was really gone. The prison was in Oregon, a 3-hour drive through rain that never seemed to stop. Elena offered to come, but Landon needed to do this alone. They brought Graham out in chains. He looked thinner, grayer, older. Prison didn't suit him. Thanks for coming, Graham said, sitting down across the scarred table in the visiting room. What do you want? To apologize. Landon almost laughed. Bit late for that. I know, but I needed to say it anyway. I was wrong about all of it. The poisoning, the frame job, Victor. I let my ego and my resentment turn me into something I never meant to be. A murderer? Yeah, a murderer. Graham looked down at his hands. I think about it every day. About what I almost did. To you. To Sophie. And I can't make it make sense anymore. Even to myself. Good. It shouldn't make sense. Trying to kill someone because you're jealous doesn't make sense. It wasn't just jealousy. It was everything. Your name, your money, your perfect life. I wanted it so badly I convinced myself I deserved it more than you did. And once I started down that road, Graham shook his head. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that I know what I did. And I'm sorry. Landon sat back in his chair. Part of him wanted to rage, to make Graham feel a fraction of the fear Landon had felt with Victor's hands around his throat. But mostly, he just felt tired. I forgave you a long time ago, Landon said quietly. Not because you earned it, but because holding on to that anger was killing me. So yeah, you're forgiven. But that doesn't mean I trust you, or that I'll ever forget what you did. Fair enough. Graham's smile was sad. How's Sophie? Good. Happy. She doesn't know any of this. As far as she's concerned, her Uncle Graham moved away. That's probably for the best. Tell her I'm sorry I can't be there for her birthday parties anymore. I will. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Graham leaned forward. The waitress. Elena. You're with her now? Yeah. Is it real or just trauma bonding? Landon thought about Elena making pancakes in his kitchen, about her studying late at night for her MBA classes, about the way Sophie lit up when Elena walked into a room. It's real, he said. Good. You deserve that. Real things. After everything I put you through. Graham stood up, chains rattling. Take care of yourself, Landon, and tell Elena I'm sorry. For everything. The guard led him away. Landon watched until Graham disappeared through the door, then walked out of the prison and into the rain. He sat in his car for a long time, letting the water hammer on the roof, thinking about forgiveness and second chances and how some people got them and some people didn't. Then he drove home. Elena was waiting when he got back, curled up on the couch with a textbook and Sophie asleep against her shoulder. How'd it go? She whispered. It went. He apologized. Do you believe him? Yeah, I think I do. Doesn't change anything, but yeah. Elena shifted carefully, trying not to wake Sophie. You want to talk about it? Not really. I just want to be here. With you. With her. With this. This works for me. Landon sat down on the couch beside them, and Sophie mumbled something in her sleep and shifted so she was leaning against both of them. Elena's hand found his, fingers interlacing, and they sat there in the quiet house listening to the rain and Sophie's breathing and the sound of their life happening around them. A year later, on a clear Saturday in October, Landon married Elena in the backyard overlooking Lake Washington. Small ceremony, just close friends and family. Sophie was the flower girl and took her job very seriously, making sure every petal was placed perfectly. Marcus was the best man. Teresa cried through the entire ceremony. Margaret Fowler showed up with a gift basket worth more than most people's cars. And Elena, in a simple white dress that she'd found at a consignment shop and insisted on buying herself, looked like everything Landon had never known he wanted. "You saved my life," Landon said during his vows. "And then you gave me a reason to live it. I don't know what I did to deserve you, but I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of it." Elena's vows were simpler. "I saw you when no one else did, and you saw me back. That's all I ever wanted. That's all I'll ever need." They kissed as the sun set over the water, painting everything gold, and Sophie cheered louder than anyone. At the reception, someone asked Elena how it felt to go from waitress to billionaire's wife. "I wouldn't know," Elena said, smiling. "I'm not a billionaire's wife. I'm a VP at a tech company who happens to be married to her boss. And before that, I was a woman who made a choice to help someone when I didn't have to. Everything else is just details." That night, after the guests had gone and Sophie was asleep upstairs and the caterers had cleaned up the last of the champagne glasses, Landon and Elena sat on the deck one more time. "Think we'll be happy?" Elena asked. "I think we already are." "No, I mean long term, when the excitement wears off and it's just regular life. Bills and grocery shopping and arguing about whose turn it is to take out the trash." Landon pulled her close. "Especially then, that's when it matters most. You're getting too good at this. It's suspicious." "I've had a good teacher." They sat there as the stars came out, talking about nothing and everything, making plans they might not keep and promises they would. And somewhere across the city, in a house they'd never see, someone was probably having dinner and making deals and building empires that would probably crumble. But here, in this moment, with this woman, and this life, and this daughter sleeping upstairs surrounded by stars on her ceiling, Landon had everything. Not because he'd inherited it, or earned it, or fought for it, but because Elena Hart had seen poison in a wine glass and made a choice. One glass, one decision. 2 lives changed forever. And in the end, that was enough.